Welcome everyone, welcome to the launch of the BAMEStream Bereavement Support Service. As it's National Grief Awareness Week, kind of thought it would be apt to, launch the service this week. As you can see, I'm wearing my t-shirt, and so I just want to thank Linda McGistry from the Good Grief Trust for providing the t-shirt for me. Really excited to be here for this launch. For this, a service that's much needed within our community. So just to introduce myself, my name's Helen. I'm the founder of BME Voices. I'm also part of the BAMEStream Alliance and part of the management team, along with Dr. Yancy Rolston, who I'll be introducing you to, and also Patrick Vernon, he's part of the team as well. On behalf of BAMEStream Alliance, I just want to thank you all for joining us for the launch of this much needed bereavement support service for our communities today. And before we start, I also want to acknowledge and thank the National Lottery Community Fund, the Majonzi Fund and the Ubele Initiative in supporting us with the creation of this service. A special thanks has to go out to the Ubele Initiative, who are out there doing some phenomenal work. And they've been instrumental in supporting us with this service. And when the COVID-19 pandemic hit our shores, they answered the call to do whatever they could to support our communities. And without them, just to say that this service, bereavement support service, wouldn't be launching today. If you have any questions throughout, please put them in the Q&A box, and I'll try my best to get them answered for you. And to start off this launch and to keep with the community spirit, we'll be graced with a musical rendition. And I'm honoured to introduce you to a calypsonian called Alexander the Great. He's known for appearing at festivals and well-known venues across the UK, including the Cambridge Folk Festival, Notting Hill Carnival and the Barbican. He divides his time between running a 10-piece band, his own small record label, and doing calypso and poetry workshops in schools and colleges, and that's in the UK and in the Caribbean as well. And also, since February 2000, he's been the resident calypsonian for the BBC. He's an ardent supporter of Ubele's You Give Hope programme and is committed to bringing joy and laughter to those who are trying to cope with the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic is having on people's lives. And he's written a special song for us today. So yeah, welcome Alexander the Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Helen. Okay, this song, I like what you said about joy and laughter. Yes, joy, I hope. This song is called Sometimes, and it is to try to assuage the pain of grief, which is so necessary at this time. It's so hard to grieve in isolation when the climb before us looks immense. Whether partner, close friend or relation, loneliness can feel much more intense as more of us struggle with bereavement. We can't let this virus get control. Oh no, take time off to cherish our achievements, letting precious memories fill your soul. Sometimes we hurt so much, sometimes we feel their touch, sometimes we are hostile, sometimes we want to smile, sometimes we have to scream, special days are when these things most matter. Diwali, Christmas, Pesach, Ramadan. Help is there for us before we shatter. Whether we are child, woman, or man. Suffering in silence can't resolve it. Locking up the pain we're going through. Oh no, peer groups are there who may help us solve it. Reaching out is what we need to do. Sometimes we hurt so much. Sometimes we feel their touch. Sometimes we are hostile. Sometimes we want to smile. Sometimes we have to scream. Sometimes we're in a dream. Sometimes we rise above. Sometimes we just feel love. Sometimes we may think our heart is healing. Other times we're sure it's going to crack. No one else can know just how we're feeling. Are we moving on or sliding back? Grief is like a basket full of sadness, filled with stories of a loving past. Oh yes, telling them again can bring us gladness and ensure our memories will last. Sometimes we hurt so much. Sometimes we feel their touch. Sometimes we are hostile. Sometimes we want to smile. Sometimes we have to scream. Sometimes we're in a dream. Sometimes we rise above. Sometimes we just feel love. Sometimes.
Thank you, Alexander.
My
That was,
pleasure.
oh, yeah, I like it. Sometimes we're, different feelings we have at different times. Sometimes. Can I ask you, what inspired you to write that song?
Oops, sorry. I'm back on. For some reason that went off.
That's-
Well, actually, Dr. Yancy asked me, she told me about this event and said, you were having this event, and I thought, wow, that's a tough subject. Well, because it was a tough subject, because I looked at the website, I saw lots of information, all very good information, but I didn't want it to be a list of services or suggestions. And so I thought, what can I make? And then bit by bit, I saw some of the videos that some of your contributors, and what inspired me was the things I heard in the videos. There's one lady who said, grief is like a basket full of sadness. And that was the first line I thought of. Wow. Because I too, I mean, everyone's experienced it. We've experienced it in our house. Not close relatives, but close friends who've been lost over this COVID time. And that's what started it off. And then then the idea of it being, the feelings changed. So that's how the words sometimes came up. And then gradually it unfolded over about 2 days, because songwriting is not, it's, there's two aspects. There's the art and the craft. The craft is knowing how to put it together, which I'm quite good at after many years of doing stuff for the Beeb. But the art is the inspiration. It's the bit that the Almighty gives you, and you're looking for it, you search for it, and then, you know, at a certain point it comes. And it was the word sometimes, and that phrase, grief is like a basket full of sadness. And then I knew from where to come in order to write the song, which was, it's about our experiences. And there's a line in it about peer groups are there who may help us solve it. And that's what, so the information's there in the song telling you, you must reach out to people. But in fact, it's just about how we feel. So I'm very pleased to have written it, because I like the challenge, and I also like it when I find the right, what's the word I'm looking for? The right aspect that needs to be come out in a song, because a song is different from an information sheet. It has to stand aside from that, you know. And I mean, we also try and write songs that aren't just about events. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you can write, it's like, if you write about an event, it's like an advert. When the event's gone, the song's gone. I'm hoping this song can be sung in 20 years time, or as every time anybody needs that, because it isn't going to stop. So, you know, thank you for the opportunity.
Just to say, you know, as I said, it's a beautiful song, and I'm sure, you know, a lot of people listening to it through what they're going through with this pandemic will find solace in it. So yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, you know, we're all here to do with the bereavement, the BAMEStream Bereavement Support Service. And it's been in the making for a while, and yeah, we're really pleased to be here now. And I wanted to bring in Bafor Ababio. He's from NAFSIA Intercultural Therapy Centre, and they're going to be providing the service. So yeah, I'll introduce you all to Bafor now. Hello, hi Bafor.
Hello, Helen.
Hi. I thought we'd start, you know, obviously we're here to talk about the bereavement support service. And I thought we'd start with you introducing yourself, Bafor, what you do for NAFSIA, and a bit of history, because I know that NAFSIA have been around since, I think it was 1983.
That's correct, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. So good morning to everyone. My name is Bafor Ababio. It is a Ghanaian name, an Ashanti name. Bafor stands for courage, which is quite apt for the times we're living in now. And Ababio relates to reincarnation, that you've come back again. So with setbacks, we keep coming back. Now, my association with NAFSIA began in 1996, having lived in the UK for about 4 years, sort of lost and looking for a home and a place to train, and found NAFSIA, or perhaps NAFSIA found me, and did my training there, and qualified in the intercultural psychotherapy approach in 2000. So I'm originally from Ghana, having lived in the UK. I work as a psychotherapist, and I'm a member of the clinical team of NAFSIA. I work there as a therapist and a supervisor. As Helen's invited me to do, I will attempt to summarize the work conducted by the therapists at NAFSIA, Intercultural Therapy Center, within the next few minutes. I've made some notes which should keep me in check. I would also like to note that we're now in the last month of a momentous and difficult year, especially so for Black, African and Asian communities for a number of reasons. To name just back two, Black Lives Matter and the pandemic and its disastrous impact on our communities. I'm sure there are many of us on this platform who have in some way been touched by these events. However, BAMEStream is a testament to our capacity to pull together and provide support to our communities in demanding and taxing times. In the same vein, it's also ironic that the conditions that has led to the formation of BAMEStream accurately references the issues which facilitated the emergence of NAFSIAT Therapy Center in the early 1980s. Issues of inequity and disproportionality and its devastating impact on the mental well-being of Black, African, and Asian communities. You see, NAFSIAT has always sought to highlight the racism in psychotherapy, its white, Western racial and cultural values and inherent biases. Secondly, it probes the assumed universal application of Western psychotherapy. For example, who constitutes a family, and therefore, who do we mourn for? Who are we grieving for? We also include non-Western concepts of mental illness and healing into the practice of psychotherapy. As a therapist and a client, as a therapist and a counselor, can the client who believes their problems may be a consequence of a curse consult a traditional healer whilst receiving counseling? Yes. It was normal when I was growing up in Ghana for the bereaved person to report sightings of a dead person or hearing their voice. Can the therapist place these expressions of grief in the appropriate cultural context in differentiating between abnormal and normal reactions to loss? It is possible. Now, the intercultural therapy model contends that racism is an integral aspect of socio-political life in the United Kingdom and can influence one's life course, where one lives, studies, one's health outcomes, job opportunities, and how one experiences bereavement. And that the impact of racism, by that I mean psychological injuries sustained from racism, should therefore be integrated in addition to other factors in counseling, psychotherapy assessment, and treatment. Since the 1980s, the intercultural model at NAFSIAT have made progress in working in a culturally competent way. And it does this by increasing its knowledge about different cultures, learning about different cultures. But what it also does is that it uses its knowledge about different cultures, racial identity processes, to engage in the work that we do with the clients. The counselors and the therapists always maintain a stance of curiosity, of always being open to learning, and secondly, by responding to clients on the basis of the knowledge gained and thereby furthering their clinical experience. Finally, the intercultural model places an emphasis on therapists being able to locate themselves. By that, I mean an ongoing work on self-awareness, including recognizing one's prejudices and biases as a therapist. The focus of the work has always been on developing a good enough service delivery to Black, African, and Asian communities. The counseling and therapy team comprise many cultural groups, many with lived experiences of the issues being addressed. That is, therapists, they've been refugees, political prisoners, they've experienced loss, bereavement. So the team is imbued with a social and political consciousness, and therefore attuned to those realities in the lives of the clients that we see. So we strive to provide therapy in the mother tongues of our clients so that not a lot can get lost in translation, if you get what I mean. So NAFSIAT has about 19 to 20 languages, as Helen mentioned. Just to name some of them: Amharic, Arabic, Bengali, English, Ga, Spanish, Sileti, Tigray, Tigrinya, Turkish, Tree, Urdu, French, Farsi, German, Krobo, Russian, Kurmanchi, and Somali. In addition to these languages is also the intercultural language, which is transmitted through publications at NAFCIAT. The work that we do with our clients as a clinical material and supervision. It is a language, the intercultural language, which privileges explorations around identity development, racism, racist injuries, engaging with resilience, trauma, community resources, gender, sexual orientation, the place of religion, what constitutes the family, self, immigration issues, and being a refugee. So the intercultural model engages with the whole person of the client and getting hold of and exploring assumptions, conscious and unconscious assumptions in the client and the therapist within the therapeutic encounter. For example, the therapist's assumptions of bereavement might be at odds with the client's experience, and that has to be explored. The service provides free short-term therapy, which is 12 sessions in 4 North London boroughs, which is Enfield, Haringey, Camden, and Islington. In addition to individual counseling and therapy interventions, we offer group therapy provided by a group analyst. There are other groups as well, which are more embedded in the community, such as the Amharic, Arabic, Tigrinya Women Speaking Group. It's a psychoeducation group with women from Eritrea, Ethiopia, Morocco, Algeria, Kuwait, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. An age range between 25 to 77 years. The group meets once a week for 4 hours. At the moment, work continues on Zoom and by telephone. Issues presented by the group around domestic violence, poverty, loneliness, health issues, immigration, homelessness, depression, anxiety, social isolation, unemployment, loss, and separation. So the group is geared towards reducing social isolation, improving self-esteem and self-confidence, and raising awareness of pathways to enabling emotional well-being. Discussions around FGM, English language classes, etc. We have the Mothers Self-Care Group, which is also a weekly therapeutic support group for mothers who identify as BAME. Topics explored in the group are around self-care, its importance, and how to cope with emotions such as anger and sadness, assertiveness. There are linguistic barriers faced by members of this group, housing, welfare benefits, and financial difficulties. We also offer reflective group sessions to various professional organizations. Our work is better done in partnerships, such as what is happening currently with BAMEStream. We work with migrant organizations and provide what can be described as a culturally sensitive therapeutic screening service for clients, identifying their needs and signposting them accordingly. The work that happens in the counseling room, or as it is now on Zoom and by telephone at NAFCIAT, helps clients with coping and processing their difficulties. However, the intercultural therapy approach recognizes that there are limits to what can be achieved in the room, and that there are external structural issues impinging and affecting our clients. And these structural issues do not yield to an individual client coping. Let me just check this messages. All right. Hope I'm okay for time. So these structural issues do not yield to an individual client's coping and addressing and processing. So to address this, NAFCIAT employs a community link worker who provides practical support for clients with issues around immigration, employment, homelessness, discrimination at work, and perhaps negotiating with social services with respect to their children. Let me just quickly run through other issues presented by clients at NAFCIAT: relationship issues, divorce, separation, miscarriages, gender roles in changing context, sexuality, domestic violence, abuse, a partner being dependent on substances, gambling, loss of status because of loss of business or work, identity issues, hybridity, discrimination at work, depression, anxiety with underlying trauma, torture, sexual abuse, physical and medical problems, and the shame around some of those medical problems. For example, breast cancer and prostate cancer. Clients come to process all these issues. We work with refugees, engaging with trauma and with resilience. And you have clients who've lived in the UK for a very long time and whose children have now grown up and left home. These clients are often left painfully missing their countries of origin, their old connections, feeling homeless, lost, not wanted, and what I'll describe as a resurgence of earlier material, of what I'll describe as cultural bereavement, which we know can in certain groups intersect with the death of a loved one in the present time. So
I thought I could just stop you there.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think everyone would agree in terms of why NAFSIA, based on your description of what the service that you provide to the community and how inclusive you are, and strive to be, that you're well placed to be offering this bereavement support to the Black and Asian and other minoritized ethnicity community. So yeah, I just wanted to, if we could just talk a bit about the bereavement service, support service,
Yes.
what will it offer? Because I know, when we were discussing the model and what it would look like, talking about a brief emotional support. So maybe we can start there. What would that look like?
Yes, I think we have to be careful that it's a brief emotional support. It's also bereavement support, perhaps not so much as a bereavement counseling service. So we're going to be looking at how we provide a space to process emotions which may have been locked up for some clients, not having a place to actually process it. Also providing psychoeducation, being able to help clients understand what might be happening for them. I think it's also going to be a place where there is a robust signposting arrangement in place, such as if a client comes into contact with the service and falls within that exclusion criteria, what might be possible to help that person with, which is where the signposting will come into place. And we're offering up to 3 sessions of support, and it's an England-wide intervention.
Okay, so it'll be up to 3 sessions for, and I think it's important to say that it's a service for the community, for the Black, Asian and minority ethnic, anyone who identifies under that umbrella.
Yes, and who've been affected by COVID. Yes.
The loss of a loved one, that's right. Yeah. And in terms of referral process, can we talk a bit about that? So I know it's going to be online as well through the BAMEStream website.
And that's going to be embedded on the NAFSIAT website.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be quite an easy system to engage with. And once the referral process is engaged by the client, we will then contact the client and arrange a session and carry out the work. Yes.
Yeah. So it will be, through England, for UK-wide, eligibility would be that they identify as Black, Asian.
Yes.
Yeah. And up to 3 sessions, and referral is for online via the websites, BAMEStream and NAFSIAT.
Yes.
And telephone and email.
Telephone, email, yes.
Yeah.
And there is a facility to use Zoom too.
Okay, yeah, that was one of the questions that came in actually. Will it be online, online service?
Because at the moment, we operate telephone offer as well as a video platform offer, which is via Zoom. Yes.
Yeah. And one thing we forgot to say, and Dr. Yancy Rolston just reminded us that it's a free service. It's free for...
It is free, Dr. Yancy. It's England-wide, not UK-wide, is it?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a free service.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's move on now to Carl Murray. Carl is here representing the Ubele initiative, who's been very instrumental in helping us to get this service together. So welcome, Carl.
Welcome, and thank you, Ellen.
I just want to say firstly that just to let everyone know that you're the brains behind the survey that we done, the mapping, mental health survey, and in producing that great report, the implications and impact of having a culturally appropriate service to support the community through COVID. So just to thank you on that and to say that.
Thank you. I'm going to make a start because and I'm going to share my screen and hope that my voice is audible enough so you can hear me. And I'll try and keep the presentations to within 10 to 15 minutes, if that's okay. So bear with me for a second. I'm just going to access my screen and we're off. Just a quick overview as to what I hope to cover in the next 10 to 15 minutes in relation to Ubele. I'm just going to introduce Ubele as the organization that's been supporting BAMEStream, but also more widely to say a little bit about some of the work Ubele has been undertaking in the light and in view of the pandemic. I'll then say a little bit more about the BAMEStream mapping report that Ellen alluded to, and then just to say a little bit about the We Need Answers campaign that Ubele is driving. Okay, let me make a start then. Who we are. Now, a number of you may have got involved in a number of Ubele organized activities online since March, and also before, to be honest. But just by way of summarizing and summing up who we are. Ubele was established formally. I say established formally in 2014. It had been in the developing stage as early as 2010 through the hard work of the founder, Yvonne Field. But it was formally constituted, incorporated in 2014 as a social enterprise. It has 3 directors that oversees the work, which is delivered by a team of associates and full-time equivalent staff. The primary mission is to build more and sustainable communities across the UK. So it's not just a localized London-based organization. I think it's important to say that. And so we do have work taking place across the UK, not just England, but across the UK. Ubele has been developed through a bottom-up community-based approach, and that kicked off in 2010. That has led us to where we are today. For further information and more detail about the organization and the range of activities and involvement and reports and activities can be found on the website www.ubele.org. And that's important because in the time given, we're just not able to cover everything. So a quick snapshot as who we are. Some of the emerging principles that drive some of the work, some of we call it the 6 I's, the approach in the way we work, what the underpinnings of how we're working and our thinking. It's about innovation, We're about innovation. We're about internationalism. We're about intergenerational work. But just as important, we're about initiating pieces of work, as well as initiating challenges and conversations. And later on, we'll hear a bit about the We Need Answers campaign. It's about incubating, and BAMEStream is an example of an incubated program. And we work with the organizations and enable them to grow and develop. And we also provide infrastructure support on a much more pan-London and elsewhere basis from a more strategic point of view. So those are what we call the 6 sides. It's emerging concept, emerging underpinnings, but they seem to capture what Ubele is about in both what it's trying to achieve and how it's trying to achieve it. Which then brings us to some of the work around COVID-19. When the pandemic hit in March, Ubele, through myself and others, initiated a national survey to pick up on the nuances we were hearing around the disproportionality of the impact of COVID on the BAME community. But what we wanted to do, given our principal and primary aim in working with communities and community organizations, was to get a sense of what is the impact on the ground as it affects community organizations. And so we instituted a rapid review survey just after the national pandemic was announced in March and concluded early April. And what we did then was to, I think it was about 182 or so organizations across the UK responded. And when I say UK, I really do mean UK, because we have respondents from Scotland and Wales. And one of the principal outcome that we found, and it has been, and if you Google 9 out of 10 BAME, you'll actually see reference to the report. 9 out of 10 BAME micro and small organization was set to close if the crisis continued beyond the 3 months that we then had. What we found was that the majority of the organizations were micro and small organizations. That's organizations with funding under 100,000, but principally around 15 to 20,000 a year. They were struggling. They had very little, if no reserves whatsoever. And at the height of the pandemic, they were threatened to go by the wall within a month, definitely within 3 months. What that meant also was that it helped to spur on a whole range of opportunities and support for the sector, with funders like the National Lottery, Comic Relief and others, making BAME community organisations, small and micro organisations, a priority, which also included London Community Resource funding. But it also led to another rapid review in London that Dr. Yancy and I conducted on behalf of Ubele, alongside Professor Nasru from Manchester University, reported into the Greater London Authority. That report came out in October, and again, we were able to speak, interview, hear the voices of BAME-led organizations, but more importantly, BAME community members who were at the sharp end of the impact. That, as I said, led on to a number of work, not just the October report, but principally the March report, where Ubele have been involved with work with Power to Change, the Phoenix Fund that's now closed, and also the community-led Organizations Recovery Scheme, CLAWS for short, also with Power to Change and Locality and the National Lottery. It's also been involved with the drive for the bereavement fund called Majonzi Fund. And I won't say much about that today because it's on the agenda for another time. But the Majonzi Fund is specifically targeted, along with Patrick Vernon, targeted at a bereavement fund to support the BAME communities, members of BAME communities, in a way linking back to some of the point that Bafu just was alluding to. Ubele have been involved with a group of young people around the We Need Answers campaign. And that has gained massive interest and has gone as far as the Prime Minister's ears, to which we're still here waiting for a response. But fundamentally, what it is, We Need Answers campaign is a campaign started by a group of community organisers committed to bringing the disproportionality of COVID-19 impact on BAME communities into the mainstream narrative and discussion. We are keen to provide a voice and visibility to communities that are affected by the pandemic. And again, if you wish to find more about and to contact the organisers, again, one of the incubated organiser group within Ubele is We Need Answers at ubele.org. Linked to that, as I indicated, was the public inquiry. And you'd have heard about the PHE England review report that Dr. Kevin Fenton had been instrumental in driving through. I won't go through all of this, but the letter went to the Prime Minister asking to support a call for an independent public inquiry, and to date we have still yet waited for an answer. So there are further campaigns going on pushing for an answer. So do keep your ears and eyes open, and we'll continue to push and support. Finally, the BAMEstream National Mapping Report that Ellen alluded to. Driving through all the work we've been doing, as I said at the beginning, was supporting BAME communities, and in particular, beginning to get a sense of need and solution. Out of the BAMEstream national mapping process, these are some of the key findings. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just going to pick up on a few. And then I'll just say a little bit about some of the things, and then I'll just end there. We found that there was an increased demand for BAME mental health services. However, and in finding that, there is a lack of BAME mental health provision at the same time. Smaller organizations who wanted to do work around bereavement, but were struggling because of funding issues. And so we go back to that earlier report in terms of the organizations struggling to stay afloat as a result of the pandemic. And some of the knock-on was the reduction in funding opportunities. We also found BAME-led organizations, providers are in need of capacity building and infrastructure support. And again, some of the work that Ubele has been picking up in the light of this has been to try and work with organizations to build their capacity. A program underway called the Mali Enterprising Leaders Program, England, started on the 24th of November and goes through to March. And if there are anyone interested, do contact us via the Ubele website email address, and we'll be able to put you in touch. The closing date for anyone interested is the 11th of December, so do get involved. And there is no national offer for bereavement services for BAME communities, and the Public Health England report did not discuss the need for cultural competencies around bereavement. And again, the points raised by Bafwa at the outset underscores the need for more effective intercultural support processes. We were finding that things like funerals were impacted on, and how people grieved in the light of bereavement and how people sort of closed the loop was an emergent. It's something that came through with the subsequent October report with the GLA that Yancy and I conducted. We were hearing the voices coming through loud and clear. The impact on not being able to say farewell to your loved ones under these restrictions is something that's also having a feedback loop in how people perceive their daily lives. So some of the concerns that people, and I'm just going to end there, that some of the people who we conducted the survey reported on. And again, these were of providers of mental health services across the UK, across England in particular, but definitely across the UK. We were seeing that more and more providers were seeing that there were more and more stress and anxiety related concerns being reported. Isolation and loneliness, and this broader range of mental health concerns was figuring quite largely. During the period of March to September, when we conducted, we asked people to comment on, they were seeing that there is an increase beyond what they were normally getting pre-COVID time in these areas. Whilst financial hardship was emerging, it was not as strong a thing. And again, bereavement and trauma was beginning to bite home. And at the time when we asked questions about families and providers encountering situations in their immediacy, there weren't that many. But subsequent to this, we have learned with the wave 2, we have seen that increase. So if we were to conduct this survey again, I am sure that would actually increase substantially. What this tells us overall then is that mental health concern, stress, anxiety, and concerns over bereavement and the likes is an important feature of how we go forward under this pandemic. And the work of BAMEStream coming online, pardon the pun, is an expression of moving towards meeting a need. And so the report, if it has helped, it has begun to shine some light on some of the nuances coming through, but more importantly, that there is definitely a need out there to support bereaved families, and also to begin to pick up on some of the mental health concerns that's out there. I hope that's give you a very, hopefully, a good rundown and the picture of where we're at the moment. Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, and I think it definitely provides an overview of Ubele's work and you know, how instrumental they were in terms of, you know, the support they've given to BAMEStream and being able to launch this service. So yeah, thank you. And actually, so now I'll move on to Dr. Yancy Rolston, who is part of Ubele and BAMEStream, and has also been very instrumental into, you know, getting to where we are today. So Yancy, do you want to introduce yourself? And yeah, we'll take it from there.
Thanks very much, Helen. Before I continue, I just want to say thank you to the Good Grief Trust for my backdrop today. Thank you so very much. So why BAMEStream? Why are we doing this? Well, we all heard and read and witnessed the impact COVID was having on Black, Asian, and minority ethnic people. People were dying. So we decided we would come together because we wanted to ensure that bereavement and grief services are culturally relevant, especially those that are being offered within mainstream provision. Now, some of the findings from the study, as Carl mentioned, show that mainstream services in some instances didn't even consider that they needed to be culturally competent when commissioning services in doing their policy work or even in service development. So we knew we had to come together to support them in plugging that gap. So who is the we? Who is BAMEStream and what is BAMEStream? As Helen mentioned earlier, it's an alliance which is led by Helen, Patrick Vernon, and myself, but we're supported by a collective of Black, Asian, and minority ethnic practitioners, therapists, researchers, policy experts, academics, who all work or specialize in the area of mental health and therapy. Not necessarily specifically related to bereavement, but we've come together to put our expertise, if you will, into the pool, because our core purpose is about raising awareness and addressing urgent mental health needs and well-being in our community, and that includes bereavement, grief, and loss. It's been a tough road. We have been doing this since, I think, Helen, correct me if I'm not wrong, might be April sometime when we first came together to think it through. But thankfully, we were able to secure some funding from National Lottery Community Fund, and of course, with support from the Ubele initiative to get where we are today. So thanks to the Lottery Fund, thank you to Ubele and the Good Grief Trust who've supported us. So far, what have we done? The report Carl mentioned, which took us across UK-wide. It was a significant piece of work, and Carl, I can't thank you enough for that. We've participated in the Good Grief Festival. I don't know how many of you were there, but it was a fabulous, fabulous 3 days. Don't be put off by the name. We did some presentations. We spoke about different elements of grief, loss, bereavement, and supported in hosting some of those conversations. BAMEStream, we've been supporting the Majonzi Fund, more of which you will hear on Sunday. So the Majonzi Fund was set up by Patrick Vernon, a Ubele initiative, and BAMEStream are supporting. And the idea is to offer small grants to help families, colleagues, and community groups so that not really post-COVID, hopefully in the new year, they can organize some memorial events for those who have died during COVID. But additionally, without going into too much detail, Majonzi Fund has been able to raise sufficient money to help BAMEStream offer some of that free therapeutic support that Bafo had mentioned earlier. We've also commissioned Nafsiat to do their free bereavement support, which Bafo mentioned. We publicly acknowledged World Mental Health Day, so we had some radio broadcasts. And actually feedback from some of the listeners was that it was good to know that we were acknowledging it, but they had not even realized that bereavement support should be culturally competent. We've developed a website, so please go have a look. And here we are today, launching the bereavement service during what is National Grief Week. Folks, this is just the beginning. You know, we have grand, but hopefully achievable plans for the future. Our aim is to continue working with BAMEStream, develop partnerships, and collaborate with not just BAMEStream service providers, but other mental health service providers and actually individuals who are there willing to support what we do. We will be offering bereavement and grief support specifically to young people, designed and co-created with them. You know, they're saying nothing for us without us. So we're taking that as well to say we want to support young people. So we will, with them, co-create a program of support that we can offer, but also develop some toolkits for those who work with young people to support them. People like youth workers, social workers, and teachers, and that will have elements of grief and loss and bereavement support. We will also create, these are all our great plans, and you will help us achieve it, I know. We will also create a community-based bereavement referral hub designed for Black, Asian, and other minoritized communities, where people will be signposted to therapists and services, but also get access to tools and resources that are culturally competent. Our website, the aim is that the website will become a one-stop shop for bereavement services for our community, if you will. Great ambitions, I know.
Yeah, see, I just wanted to say as well about, while we're, with COVID, we're focusing on bereavement, but also, our plans as well, kind of broadening out, to do with mental health support for our community, once we get past COVID-19. Yeah,
absolutely. We will be upskilling bereavement therapists and offering support to national organizations. We will be reinforcing existing Black and Asian minority therapeutic infrastructure, as Helen said, beyond bereavement, grief, and loss. Just generally what's out there. And that includes mental health support, coaching support, anything that will enhance the work that needs to be done. We will enhance the experiences of young people within the context of grief, loss, and bereavement and mental health. So we will be working with them to help them develop webinars and podcasts and blogs and case studies. When Carl and I were doing the bit of report on the voluntary sector, we both spoke to communities and young people, and they were saying just how much they impacted, not just by COVID, but life's experiences. And the fact that they weren't really aware of how to get support, where to go to for support, how to self-refer. and what was out there, but also they wanted services that reflected their own needs from a cultural perspective, but age appropriate as well. So the idea is in BAMEStream, we will do those things. Ambitious plans, we know, but we will do it. And also one of the things we would like to do is to undertake some research on older people from Black and Asian communities on aging as it relates to their mental health. So watch this space. We've got big ambitions and plans. Stay connected. Help us to get to where we need to. Signpost us to any funding that you may know of, but help us build this partnership, help us build this alliance, and do what we can to support our community. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Dr. Yancy Rolston. Thank you. There's lots just to say, just aware of the time, and we're going to need to finish now, and there's lots of questions, so we will get back to you all individually. We'll send emails. Any information that you require to do with the bereavement support service, you can go onto the BAMEStream website, and the website address is bamestream.org.uk. All the information's there, everything to do with how you can refer, whether that's online or email or telephone, everything is there for you. Yeah, I want to thank you all for joining us today again and taking part in this launch of a much needed community bereavement support service. And yeah, just to end, we've got Alexander the Great again going to be singing us out. Thank you, everyone.
Helen, I think under the circumstances, I'm going to sing the song again because it's much more relevant than me singing "Remember Our Heroes." And there are a lot more people now than were on when I first did it. Yep. So this song was written specifically for this movement. It's called "Sometimes," and Dr. Yancy requested that I write a song, which I'm very pleased to have done. So I hope you enjoy it. It's so hard to grieve in isolation when the climb before us looks immense. Whether partner, close friend, or relation, loneliness can feel much more intense. As more of us struggle with bereavements, we can't let this virus get control. Oh no, take time off to cherish our achievements, letting precious memories fill your soul. Sometimes we hurt so much, sometimes we feel their touch, sometimes we are hostile, sometimes we want to smile, sometimes we have to scream, sometimes we're in a dream, sometimes we rise above, sometimes we just feel love, sometimes. Special days are when these things most matter. Diwali, Christmas, Pesach, Ramadan. Help is there for us before we shatter. Whether we're a child, woman, or man. Suffering in silence can't resolve it. Locking up the pain we're going through. Oh no, Peer groups are there who may help to solve it. Reaching out is what we need to do. Sometimes we hurt so much. Sometimes we feel their touch. Sometimes we are hostile. Sometimes we want to smile. Sometimes we have to scream. Sometimes we're in a dream. Sometimes we rise above. Sometimes we just feel love. Sometimes we may think our heart is healing. Other times we're sure it's going to crack. No one else can know just how we're feeling. Are we moving on or sliding back? Grief is like a basket full of sadness, filled with stories of a loving past. Oh yes, telling them again can bring us gladness and ensure our memories will last. Sometimes we hurt so much. Sometimes we feel their touch. Sometimes we are hostile. Sometimes we want to smile. Sometimes we have to scream. Sometimes we're in a dream. Sometimes we rise above. Sometimes we just feel love. Sometimes. Thank you, Yancy. Thank you, everybody. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you, Alexander, and thank you everyone for taking part today. BAMEStream, wish you well, and yeah, goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.